Well, hello everybody. Welcome to our summary of our recent trip to Venice, Trieste and Barcelona with a 2-week Queen Victoria cruise in the middle of it. As usual, we'll summarise our thoughts fairly briefly, I think. Starting with Manchester. We flew in and out of Manchester with Jet2, went up the day before and stayed overnight in the Holiday Inn Express by Terminal 2, which is where we were going to fly from. And Terminal 2 is within, 5 minutes walk, easy walk from the hotel. It was just as well that we did go up the previous day, wasn't it, Ruth? Or we'd have missed the flight by about a day and a half. It was a dreadful journey up. Every time you turned round, it didn't start very well. We got about 15 minutes from home, and I suddenly thought, I haven't put my iPad in, which wouldn't have been the end of the world, except I'd left the blessed thing on charge, and I couldn't really leave it on charge for 3 weeks. So we had to turn around, go home, get the blessed thing, and start again. And in that time, the roads had just become chaotic. So instead of it being a couple of hours to get to Manchester, it turned out it was more like 5.5, wasn't it?
It was a long time, yes.
Oh, I thought we were never going to get there. But the hotel was a typical Holiday Inn Express, exactly what you'd think. The room was standard. I'm going to do a video about that. And the food in the restaurant in the hotel wasn't bad at all. It's got a Turkish flavour. Was it Turkish? I think it was.
Yes, I think it was Turkish.
Turkish sort of themed restaurant. It did other things as well. And we had some quite reasonable food. We parked with Drop and Go. And that worked really well. Really, really well. Could not be more pleased with that. You take your car to the airport, following the signs, although we found you're definitely better off with Google Maps. Go into the entrance to the multi-storey car park, and your car is taken from you by one of the staff, and you take your key to an office not far away, where you hand it in, and in return you get a receipt with a barcode on it. And at the end, when you come back again, you simply go to it, show this barcode to a reader, and just like one of these Amazon lockers that we've got all over the place now, you show the barcode, a little door flips open, your key's inside, and on a label attached to your key is where your car is. And nothing about Manchester Airport was bad, was it? I mean, we sailed through the whole emigration process both ways, didn't we?
Yeah, there were no problems there. I suppose the only thing was that the Drop and Go was Terminal 1, and we had to get the bus in between.
But there was a free hopper bus that you sort of took you to Terminals 2 and 3, and points in between. So that wasn't a problem. You got your cases, you went down in the lift, didn't you, from the second floor?
Yes.
And then you'd walk, I don't know, less than 100 yards.
It wasn't very far.
Less than 100 yards across the road to a bus shelter, and then you just waited for the next one to come, and they were pretty regular. We had an extremely good flight to Venice. It took off pretty much on time. Very smooth flight. We had beautiful cloudless sky, so you had lovely views down of the ground as we flew over it, especially the Alps. As we went through there, that was great. And then we landed at Venice Marco Polo. And again, everything went incredibly well. The luggage came off very quickly. Both cases turned up, thank goodness. We just picked them up, walked outside, and there was a guy who'd sent me a WhatsApp message to say that our pre-arranged transfers, because the whole holiday had been packaged by our local travel agent, the flights, the transfers, the hotels, the cruise, and the hotel at Barcelona, the transfers back out. So our hotel in Venice was on Venice Island. And there is no road transport to Venice Island. So it's slightly odd when we came out and there was a chap with our name on who took us to his car. And I'm thinking, now what? But he was actually taking us to an interchange point where he rang somebody else and a water taxi turned up. We had our own personal water taxi, which took us to our hotel, which had its own landing stage right on the Grand Canal. And that was an interesting hotel. But a 14th to 15th century building, very old building, very ornate. But unfortunately, because of that, not very accessible. The breakfast room was upstairs, and the only way it seemed to get, I didn't see a lift anywhere, did you?
There wasn't any lifts, because otherwise they wouldn't have taken the luggage
That's
up
true.
for us, would they?
That's true. No, there was a lad, a bellhop, I suppose you might say, who helped you with your bags because you all had to go up and downstairs. So that was the only thing about it, because it would not be accessible to anybody who had walking problems. Although, to be absolutely honest, I don't think Venice itself is very accessible. The little tiny narrow streets, for the most part, don't need to be that big, to the point where on some of them you are literally brushing shoulders with people going the other way. And there's a convention that you walk on the right-hand side of the paths. That's really all they are. And every 2 or 3 minutes you come to another little bridge over a canal of some sort. So Venice is not the place if you're in a wheelchair or you can't walk very well, because fundamentally walking is what you've got to do. The hotel, as I say, was great. We had a problem. We were there 2 nights. The first morning we had problems because our room was right next door to a service area where they got stuff ready for the breakfast room. And one morning, I think they must have been bringing cutlery and other stuff into there, because we were woken up at about 6 a.m. by this clattering and crashing noise coming through the wall, which wasn't great, but that was the only real problem with it. It didn't serve evening meals, but there were plenty of restaurants and street bars and cafes and things. Excuse me. So we spent one day going around Venice, didn't we?
Yeah. We walked round and saw the major bits of the Venice Island.
And the taxi driver had told us to go to, I forget what.
Rialto.
No, wasn't it Rialto? No, it was that customs station.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what it's called in Italian, Punto for something. And it was what had been the customs post for Venice. And it was by what had been the warehouse where the bonded goods would have been kept. But from there, you got a very good view across the city, and you saw, from a distance, granted, the main sites in St Mark's Square. Or by the time we got back to St Mark's Square, it was quite a meandering route, wasn't it? Having to do everything on foot. it was about 4 in the afternoon, I think. So a lot of the coach parties and what have you were starting to leave, and it was quieting down. So we probably had a better view of St Mark's Square than a lot of other people did. Next day we went to one of the islands, not the one everybody's heard of, which is Murano, where you get your glass, but Burano, which is nearby. We didn't bother with Burano because we've seen glass being worked. There used to be a crystal glass factory not very far from us. We've seen them cutting glass and doing there years ago. So that wasn't much of a problem. So we had a look.
And there were plenty of shops in Venice selling Murano glass.
Oh yes, my word. So we decided we'd try one of the other islands. This was Burano, which is really renowned for its colourful houses, and that was very, very pretty. The question was how to get there. The obvious thing was the hop on, hop off boat, and we tried to do that, but for some reason it was just a pain in the proverbial to try and get a ticket, wasn't it? You remember?
Yes, I mean, I think we'd probably been all right if we'd pre-booked it, but we found where it went from. But you couldn't buy a ticket there; you had to go somewhere else
altogether. And then we had to fight. So in the end, we went to the Tourist Information Centre, which is inside the main railway station. And they said, "Oh, where do you want to go?" And we said, "Burano." I said, "Oh, well, the best way to go is with a water bus." We went, "Oh, okay." And in fact, it was exactly the same price as the hop on, hop off boat. But there were more of them. And it again lasted sort of all day. So the chap was really, really good. He said, right, you get on at the stop just over there, and you go around to this stop, and then you change to another route number so-and-so, and away you went. And it was really, really efficient. And so they were what, every half an hour or so? 20 minutes, half an hour?
Yes, I think the first ones were probably more frequent, but even the ones out to Burano weren't that came quite often.
Yes. So we went out to Burano on the water bus. As I say, and instead of being really strapped for time, because the hop on, hop off bus only ran 3 or 4 times in the day, the water buses are running virtually all day and well into the evening, half-hourly intervals kind of thing. So it made it much more flexible. So we went over to Burano, we had a coffee, had a bit of a walk around, got a feel for the place, went back to the same place for lunch. We had some tapas style food, didn't we?
Yeah.
There's a word for that, like the Italian tapas, and I can't think what it's called. But yeah, they were quite nice and not particularly expensive. So yeah, we had a nice wander around, but it was hot, wasn't it? Oh, goodness me, it was hot. But we did have some rather nice ice cream, I seem to remember, didn't we? On there. So that was our 2 days at Venice. We had the reverse on our last day. We were given a time to be down in reception. We turned up. There was a water taxi boat waiting on the dock, which was for us. We caught that. It took us back to the interchange point, and another driver met us, and it took us to Trieste in a Mercedes E-type limo. So that was really nice and comfortable. It was 2 hours from Venice to Trieste, and Elizabeth was absolutely lovely lady, good driver, very funny, spoke excellent English, and it was a very nice day. We got to Trieste, and could she find the hotel? Goodness me, we went round this one-way system, and it's one of those one-way systems where to get from, here to the end of the room, you've got to do about 2 miles. It's one of those really crazy ones. And on the second time round, she pulled over and asked somebody where this hotel was, and they literally pointed behind themselves. And it turned out the hotel is actually part of an apartment complex. I get the impression they've bought some of the apartments and turned them into bedrooms. But there are residents on some of the floors still. And our room was lovely, wasn't it?
It was.
They were very
quite
friendly.
A big one, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was. And they were very, very friendly. Again, spoke excellent English. Looked after us very well. Only there for the one night, but Trieste was interesting. We were there well before lunch, I think. So they looked after the bags for us. Check-in was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so we got plenty of time to go and have a walk. And we went off into Trieste. We found the what's it called? Piazza dell'Unità d'Italia or something like that. The square of Italian unity, if is a rough translation, and that's more or less opposite the cruise terminal. And there was a Mein Schiff cruise ship in that day, so we were able to see how that was being handled. All very easy going in actual fact. So had a walk round. We went and got a coffee and a cake, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because Trieste is very much a coffee culture place, always has been apparently, and it's quite an interesting place in itself. It's had a long and very varied history, so the area is an interesting place to explore. A lot of the stuff is sort of just there. So like there's a Roman theatre just at the side of the road, and it's literally half a mile from the hotel. So we did that. The following morning, we left the cases in the hotel. We weren't due to get on the ship until 3, I think.
Yeah, that was the time.
And so we had basically all morning and part of the afternoon to go and have another last look round. We decided to go up to the castle, but found that you've got to pay to go in. And yes, there was quite a lot up there, but the amount of money it was, and offhand I can't remember how much it was, but the amount of money it would have been to go in for the tour of us, it wasn't worth it for the amount of time we'd actually got. So it was a case of just wandering around until it's time to go back to the hotel. We got back to the port with the cases a little bit early. Didn't matter in the slightest. Nobody was worried about time. It was incredibly quick. There weren't that many people getting on, so you simply took your case to a tent on one side of the terminal building where they were just taking all the cases. And then you walked into the main terminal building and you went through the normal check-in procedures. But as I say, because there weren't that many people, there were no queues, and you were on the ship in no time at all. And that was that. So, Queen Victoria. What did you think of Queen Victoria, say, compared to Queen Mary, having been on both and they're both being Cunards?
There were some things were different, or it felt different, but on the whole it was good ship and nice and friendly, and
Yes,
everything.
it was. It was a very friendly ship. But as Ruth said, I felt the same way, that Queen Mary had a different atmosphere to it. We were only on a short cruise, of course, but even so, she's got a more, sedate's the wrong word, but I don't know what the word is, but QM2's got its own atmosphere. Queen Victoria is very much a Cunard ship. She's got very much the same kind of styling, and the crew have the same philosophy that they're working to. And we had an absolutely great time. But I would say Queen Victoria feels more like a cruise ship. So, whether it's Princess or even Morella, I think Queen Victoria feels more like that than Queen Mary did. But, each to their own. Certainly you couldn't fault the crew, could you?
No,
Any of the
no.
crew. We were looked after ever so well. James, our room steward, was good. We had 2 lovely waiters in the Britannia dining room. Looked after us very, very well. We don't drink alcohol. Ruth not at all, and me only a bit because I'm in meds. And so we have the hot drinks package, and that works out quite well for us. And they got to know us in the chart room, which is the lounge we use most of all. So, by the middle of the second week, they knew the order. We'd come in and sit down. They'd come up and sort of go, is it a cappuccino and a latte then, or is it time for 2 hot chocolates? Because we had hot chocolates before we went to bed. But no, they were always great, always funny, and I don't think you can fault the crew. There was always plenty of seats. Where it never really had a problem finding a seat anywhere, did we? Very rarely.
No, occasionally the chart room was full, but then there were seats just outside it,
where
they also served, so that wasn't really a problem.
Yeah. Cabin, very similar to the one we had on Queen Mary. Wouldn't have had any problems staying in that for a little bit longer. You had plenty of storage. We used the laundrette, which is just down the corridor. There were only 3 machines, 3 washers and 3 dryers on, I think, 4 of the accommodation decks. So that could get a bit difficult to find time. You had to keep going back, didn't you, and hoping the machine was going to be clear. But apart from that, it was fine, and it did a good job. Cases turned up really quickly, presumably because they hadn't got that many to sort out.
There were over 1,000 getting on in Trieste.
Were there?
Yeah, that was announced in the theatre one
night. A lot more than I thought then. Because it never seemed to be that big, did it? They're renowned for dancing, of course, at Cunard. We were a bit disappointed as far as that goes, for 2 reasons. One was there seemed to be a lot more selfish dancers on Queen Victoria than there were on Queen Mary. On Queen Mary, they were happy to make, the more experienced dancers seemed to be happy to make room for people who were rookies like us. On Queen Victoria, that seemed to be less true. There always seemed to be 1 or 2 who were strutting their stuff and really on show, showing off. And 1 or 2 that were going to do their routine. The other thing I wasn't keen on, I don't think you were either, was they didn't tell you what kind of tempo they were going to sing. They just played a recorded song or sang or played a tune, and you had to kind of work out what it was, didn't you?
Yeah.
which didn't help. It's fine if you know your quick step from your rumba, from your tango, from your foxtrot, but we don't. So that was difficult. Although it was quite comical one night when they played Shostakovich's Waltz Number 2, which most people will know best from the soundtrack of Eyes Wide Shut. And that is not what most people would think of as being a waltz. It's a Viennese waltz, which is about 3 times faster than the waltz most Brits would expect. And it was interesting watching people trying to dance to that. Food quality. Main dining room, we had no problems at all. I didn't.
I don't think there was any problems anywhere, really.
No, I mean, there were odd occasions when you could have said it was, I had a beef Wellington, asked for it medium, and it came medium to well done rather than medium to rare, which is what I prefer, but it was still a lovely piece of meat, so it wasn't really a great issue. There was one night when the service was really slow. Only one night out of the whole cruise, but one night it was desperate. We seemed to get served quicker at a table for 2 than bigger tables, and there was a table for, was it 8 or 10? Next,
I think there was 8 on it. Might have been 10. Certainly 8.
Next to us. And that particular night, an hour after they'd sat down, they hadn't even had their starters come, which really wasn't good enough. But that was the only time there was any real criticism to be made. The buffet, excuse me, the Lido, a lot better, I thought, than on Queen Mary. You could find your way around it more easily. But it was in 2 halves, because in the evenings, half of it becomes the Lido restaurant, where the rest of it stays as a buffet, which makes it a bit strange, because they don't you come in at breakfast and they don't serve the same things, do they? So, the restaurant half, for example, you'll find things like pancakes, waffles, crepes and all that kind of thing on offer. You walk through to the other side and you've got everything else, basically all your eggs, bacon, sausage, porridge, fruit, and yogurt and stuff. So it got a bit confusing, but you can work your way around it. So the entertainment. First week it was decidedly mixed, wasn't it? There were a couple of the guest acts which we were not impressed with at all. There was a comedian who was absolutely dire. He told very old, very crude jokes, and he got quite offensive at times. So I wouldn't watch him again. And then there was a quartet, and they were awful, really, really bad. In fact, during their second show in the Queen's Room, I saw the cruise director and asked her whether Cunard were paying them. Well, they were paying Cunard because they were so dreadful. But really, apart from that, the entertainment was good. I was disappointed by the number of shows that the show cast did, because they were really talented, weren't they?
Yes, and they only did, 2 or 3 a week, didn't they?
Yeah, something like that. They didn't do very many. And to me, that's a waste of their talent. It really was. The big difference for Cunard is their sea days. When you have a sea day, they really do pack the calendar, and almost always there are things that we wanted to see that clash with something else we would have liked to have seen. So the insight talks are usually pretty high quality. And we enjoyed those again, just like we did on Queen Mary. In fact, one of the speakers was the same. So we got
not exactly the same talk.
No, so we actually heard all four of Jeff Hughes's talks, although Channel Eric Morecambe, not necessarily in the right order. It was a really good itinerary. We enjoyed all the ports. Really, bar Corfu was the one we liked the least. The island didn't feel very friendly. Most of the time it was fine, but there were one or two places where while they wanted your money, they didn't seem to want you as well. So service was a bit short. But apart from that, it was great. We caught Kefalonia, we enjoyed. Civitavecchia, we didn't go to Rome, so we stayed in Rome for 3 or 4 nights a few years ago. We didn't really want to go back again. But I'm not sure I'd stay in Civitavecchia again.
No, there wasn't a lot there, was there?
No. And the hop-on, hop-off bus wasn't great. It didn't tell you what stops were, and it barely stopped before it moved off. So we wanted to go to the Roman Baths, which are right outside Civitavecchia. But when you got there, if you didn't know that's where you were going, by the time you'd stood up and started to go down, because we were on the top deck, but by the time you sort of stood up and started to move towards the stairs, he was moving again. So that wasn't good. I wouldn't particularly recommend staying in Civitavecchia if you can avoid it. But yes, Livorno, we went to Florence on an excursion. We did a couple of 2 or 3 excursions with Kinnard. They aren't cheap, but I thought they were well organised.
Yeah, they were. They worked really well.
They did. So we went to Florence. We could have done Florence and Pisa, but reviews of that excursion said it was rushed. You didn't get a lot of time to grab any lunch, and you're out from fairly early doors. So we decided we'd just go to Florence. We had a guided tour of Florence, then we had several hours to ourselves, and met up with the guide to go back to the bus and come back to the ship. And it's about an hour and a half to Florence from Livorno. Well worth doing. Florence is a very pretty city, very nice. There's some nice places to eat, which are not ridiculously expensive, despite it being obviously a tourist place. We sat in this square having lunch, didn't we? And out of absolutely nowhere, it hammered down. And bless them, the restaurant, they just grabbed all our gear and just moved. They were bringing a roof over this outdoor seating area, and they just grabbed all our stuff and moved us under the roof.
Because we were on the edge.
We were right on the edge, but on even though we'd virtually finished and we were getting ready for the bill, they just picked everything up and moved it without being asked to. So that was good. Then there was Toulon, La Seine-sur-Mer. Then you get a shuttle boat across to Toulon city, and you go past the main French Mediterranean fleet harbour, and the atomic aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle was in port that day. Palma de Mallorca. The one criticism I would make of the cruise was we kept leaving at about 5:30, and all aboard was about 4:30, which meant, since we didn't get there usually till about 8 o'clock, you didn't have a lot of time to do anything on your own. And given we didn't travel at any particular speed, did we? 8 or 9 knots was usual. I think they could have given us a bit more time. especially as, was that Liverpool now, where we suddenly stayed overnight because of bad weather?
No, I don't think it was. But
there was one
sure
port.
now.
There was one port anyway, where we had an overnight stay because the weather was forecast to be bad. And so we stayed in port and went out during the day. Sailed the next morning. So they go at 6 at night. We went at 6 the following morning. And we were still doing 8 to 9 knots. So I just don't know why they leave so early. But yeah, Palma to Mallorca, yes, we could have we could have done with a few more hours there to do a bit more. And then it was Valencia. We liked Valencia. That was very nice. We had an excursion into Valencia Old Town.
Yeah.
And it was a lovely place to have just a wander around, wasn't it?
Possibly different. It was Sunday, so that might have made it different to any other day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then finally we disembarked at Barcelona. And disembarkation, we had a disembarkation time of 9:15. Our taxi driver asked if we could get off any earlier. I went and made inquiries, and unlike Princess, we're at Southampton, where you were being very strictly regulated. They got the cases off. There were 1,500 people, which is about 3/4 of the number of passengers that Queen Victoria carries, were getting off. And I went to her and I said, the taxi driver wants us a bit early. She went, yeah, fine, get off when you like. The cases are all in the terminal. So go when you're ready. So we did. And the taxi driver took us to the hotel in Barcelona. That was a nice hotel. The H10 Madison Hotel. Very nice, lovely people on the desk and in the breakfast room. Looked after you. The room was very nice. Could have done with more drawers. It would have been fine for a long weekend, or say going to a conference or a business meeting where you're basically going to take all your clothes in a carry-on bag. But we were living out of suitcases because there was just nowhere to unpack.
No, there was some handing space.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 shelves, wasn't there?
Yeah, and that was your lot. But yeah, it was a good base for where we were in the Gothic quarter. So there's lots of interesting architecture. There's lots of interesting architecture in Barcelona for sure. About 10 minutes walk from the Ramblers, where somebody tried to pinch my phone unsuccessfully. But it was quite interesting. We did most of the sites. I think what I really enjoyed was going to Montjuic Park and then going up on the cable car to Montjuic Castle.
Yeah, it was a good day, that was.
And then the following day we went to Barcelona Zoo, which was okay, but a bit disappointing. We'll talk more about that in the video about Barcelona, I think. And then finally, after 3 nights, we were picked up by another taxi driver, taken to the airport, and yet again, we sailed through all the processes, got on board, and lifted off not that far off on time, landed pretty much on time. It just could not have been smoother, could it? We just got off the plane, picked the bags up, walked through passport control, picked the bags up, walked out through nothing to declare, caught the shuttle bus back to the drop and go, went, fetched the car keys, and we were on the road in no time. So all in all, it was a very interesting cruise. Well, memorable holiday for sure. An interesting cruise. First experience of Queen Victoria. I'm glad we liked it because we've got two more booked. But yes, she's got a different. She's still a Cunard ship. There's no doubt about that. But she's got a different vibe to Queen Mary. But as I said, after going on Queen Mary and seeing her sea days and the insight talks, and seeing the same on Queen Victoria where we had 4 sea days, I think although it's not high on my bucket list, if I did do a transatlantic, I would do it on Queen Mary, and I wouldn't have any issues with it because every morning at the very least would be absolutely solid, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It wasn't so much in the afternoon that there was in the morning. Not that we wanted to do.
But there was always plenty happening, and if you're into quizzes, there were lots of those, and there was a couple of scavenger hunts while we were on board and things like that. So there was lots of things to cover an awful lot of tastes. So that was good. So that's our summary of our recent holiday. I hope that's been of interest to you. And I say, of all 3 cities are well worth visiting. Trieste probably has the least to offer in itself, but makes a very good base for touring. You're only 5 miles from Slovenia, and you can get over the border. That's in Schengen, so you can get over the border without any problems at all, though we didn't. So there's a lot you can do from Trieste, and a lot you can do in Venice, of course. Barcelona, I don't know about you. I think 3 days was about enough. A long weekend would do me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if we went again, you'd be going for the museums and go into places, I think, wouldn't you?
More so, yeah. So, anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful.